I've been thinking a lot about the moral aspects of the presidential campaign. There are regular outrages on the right that defy understanding. But it occurs to me that the ineffectiveness of the Democratic campaign to effectively articulate a compelling, values-driven vision is, in a year like this, also bordering on being a moral failure. I was literally longing for voices like those of William Barmer, Simone Campbell, and Elizabeth Warren to be more prominent in the national campaign. And while that may not happen, it was heartening this week to hear about a courageous new campaign from Network, a Catholic lobby for social justice, titled the Presidential Bigotry Watch Project. And I am delighted that it brings Sister Simone Campbell, Executive Director of the Network Lobby, back to State of Belief Radio. Simone, thanks for joining us again.
Oh, so glad to be with you. Thanks for lifting this up.
Now, I understand that today you are actually a nun on a train.
That's correct. I'm headed from Chicago to South Bend, chugging along on a little commuter train.
Simone, what made you decide to involve the sisters so directly in addressing bigotry in this campaign?
Well, quite frankly, Welton, we were shocked at the level of animosity, hatred, and downright lies that are being told in this campaign, mostly against people of color or against immigrants. And at first I thought in the primaries it would calm down once we got to the general election, but it's continued unabated. Mm-hmm. And my perspective is that if we do not stand up now and say, this is enough, stop it, mm-hmm. it's only going to get worse. And as a person of faith, I know there is a requirement that we include all in our care. And when we act outside of that requirement, then we're doing harm to ourselves and harm to our nation, harm to our world. And that is wrong. And so at Network, we felt that if we didn't stand up now, when would we stand up? Mm-hmm. It's not a time for weakness at all. It's a time to be clear and engaged, and that's what we're trying to do.
Would you give a couple of examples of what you're on the lookout for?
Oh, absolutely. Let me give you our first example. I thought maybe once we, decided to do this, then the candidates would shape up. But just a couple of days ago, the Trump campaign tweeted out that the Syrian refugees were like a bowl of Skittles. Mm-hmm. And that if you knew one could kill you, would you take the bowl? And the whole idea was that these were people who were seen as just a bowl of candy, not suffering people fleeing war, mm-hmm. who are engaged in a struggle for their lives, and that cavalier disregard of the suffering of our people said to us, this is wrong. Mm-hmm. This is wrong in a national debate. We need to honor the dignity of all people. Now, I do it because of faith, but the fact is the Constitution does the same thing when it says we need to honoring all of us. And it's unacceptable that people that are spying for national leadership mm-hmm. would so disregard the dignity of people.
Right.
It's wrong.
Right. I can't help but think of an example, and I want to ask if this is the kind of thing you're talking about as well, for candidate Trump to be saying that African Americans are worse off today than they've ever been in our nation. That is a stunning statement.
It is, and the thing that I find quite disheartening is his effort to say anything to any audience mm-hmm. without a solid sense of a center for him. Uh-huh. And that kind of statement belies history, but tries to play on the current unrest, the current reality of racism that continues to live in our society, albeit a significant step beyond slavery, a significant step beyond abject poverty, a significant step in the progress we've made over the years, but we have a long way to go. So he, it appears, just makes these cavalier comments trying to garner support without any basis in fact.
Right. It's a tricky thing to do this kind of watchdog work under the auspices of a nonprofit organization. And I would like for you to talk about how you address this particular challenge, because some people, as you well know, are going to say, well, that's just outright partisanship.
Right. Well, one of the things is our organization network is both a charitable organization, a C3 under tax purposes, and a C4, a lobby organization. So we're doing this work in our lobby organization.
Sure.
But I do value that we maintain a balanced perspective. But in this instance, we are watching both candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fortunately, both candidates don't do this sort of outrageous behavior. And for the most part, while we watch every Clinton speech, or actually tweets are the big thing these days, while we watch all that, we don't expect to see as much, but if we do, we're going to call it out.
Mm-hmm.
But the other piece is, Weldon, is that I think we have this false sense of equivalency, this false sense that, oh, they're both even, they're both the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're not.
Right.
And if we, people of faith, with a strong, what I think is a strong moral compass, don't speak from our perspective, our people are lost. Our people don't have leadership. And so, quite frankly, yes, there's some worry about, well, are we really being, kind of balanced, fair and balanced news, bipartisan? Yes, we are. But the other fact is we've got to speak out when this atrocious behavior continues, regardless of the fact that it might be uncomfortable for some or uncomfortable for us.
Right.
But that's the moral mandate of the gospel for me.
How do you speak out? So you hear something in one of the campaigns that just sends chills down your spine and makes you want to jump and say, surely they didn't say that. How do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, we're trying to engage the Trump campaign. So, yes, we do tweets and a social media campaign to call out the bigotry, but we're also trying to say to them directly it's unacceptable, and to let them know that anyone who's seeking the highest office in the land needs to be respectful and responsible in their words, in their actions, and in their policies. So we do send emails and letters to the campaign. I have to say we haven't gotten a response, but we are trying to engage them directly, as well as in the social media Twitter world. The irony is that it does appear that the Trump campaign pays more attention to the Twitter world than to the other forms of engagement. So we're going to continue trying to engage them.
Simone, I'd like for you to respond to the thought that I shared during the introduction to this segment. I think, and I've been thinking about it a lot, that there is a moral component across the board in this election. We've been talking about Donald Trump a lot. I think there is a moral component to the failure of the Clinton campaign to engage progressives on a values level. Am I being too hard on them to say that?
No, I agree. I mean, the problem is the scriptures say, without a vision, the people perish. And our people are perishing. I mean, the Clinton campaign has a lot of smarts, a lot of good policy, but it's the lack of a comprehensive vision of we the people that is really, I think, hurting the campaign tremendously. And the other day I was at the Ford Foundation, and a guy who identified himself as non-religious said, well, it seems like the progressives really kind of need a moral voice, but unless you're a faith person, you can't speak with a moral voice. The progressives don't have a moral way of doing analysis. And I thought that was really interesting, and why we as people of faith are needed on both sides of the aisle to make sure that the bedrock value of the value and dignity of each person, the dignity of creation, and our right to food, shelter, clothing, education, healthcare, those bedrock values need to be lifted up at this moment. And quite frankly, I am disappointed that the Clinton campaign hasn't addressed it at that level and continues at the more detailed policy level. So I have to say, the other day, Secretary Clinton had a op-ed in the New York Times about the issue of poverty and children struggling in poverty that I thought began to touch on it. I hope she lifts that up some more.
Tell us what other work Network Lobby is doing between now and Election Day to ensure that a social justice agenda is not lost in the noise of this campaign.
Well, I'm traveling extensively around the country giving talks, and we're doing a lot of social media around our 7 Mend the Gap strategies: tax justice, living wage, family-friendly workplace. But then we also know that all of our people need access to democracy, the right to vote. We have to make sure that all of our people can vote, that there's access to health care, access to citizenship, which means immigration reform, and access to housing. So what we're doing is we've got up on our website these videos side-by-sides comparing the two candidates for president on these 7 issues, and folks can go to our networklobby.org website /election and see our videos side-by-side, just setting out briefly what the candidates say about how they stand on our 7 policies. And then we end with, well, you decide who's best for our nation. And that effort is we're taking especially to low-income communities to turn out the vote, and hoping that through prayer and engagement, we will be able to get a engaged public that will vote on November 8th.
Sister Simone Campbell is Executive Director of the Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice. This week, the sisters launched the Presidential Bigotry Watch project with the slogan, "Bigotry is a bad habit." Sister Simone is the author of the book, A Nun on the Bus, How All of Us Can Create Hope, Change, and Community. You can follow her work at networklobby.org, and you can find those issues she was talking about and the comparisons there. Simone, it's always great to speak with you. Safe travels, and thanks for being with us again on State of Belief Radio.
Thank you so much.